I love what Hyundai's done with the Ioniq, from the amount of power that this thing can push out. Some of the standard and available technology in it is unbelievable. Steve here, and before we dive into this vehicle and figure out what it's all about, I want to give Ajax Hyundai a huge shout out and a thank you for giving me access to this vehicle to shoot the video for you today. As always, check down below for their contact details. And I want to say thank you so much for helping to support the channel. It's crazy to see how this thing has grown over the course of the past 2 years, and I'm kind of excited to see where I can be in the next 2 years. Let's unpack the Hyundai Ioniq and see what this brand new electric vehicle has to offer. The exterior of the Ioniq is pretty nice. I did point out the blue highlights, so along the bumper, along the sides, and then even some things on the inside have been done aftermarket. So it's not a standard look from the factory, but it gives it a little bit of a pop. It makes it look that tiny little bit different from what you're gonna see in the majority of the Ioniq5s that are on the streets right now. But this thing does look sharp, even by itself, the way that it looks without these aftermarket kind of exterior upgrades. We do have a nice wheel well lining there, and the tire size for this thing is going to be either a 19 or a 20 inch, depending on the model of the vehicle that you're in. Now, this specific one is the preferred extended range all-wheel drive, which in the US is going to be the limited equivalent, but there are a few things in the limited that are standard that are optional inside of our preferred. So as a default in Canada in our preferred, we're going to have a 19-inch tire. Optional upgrade to 20-inch tires in one of the added tech packages not only gives you that upgraded tire, it's going to give you a heads-up display and a lot of other features inside the vehicle. But it's also going to bump up your price point. So if you in Canada want to make sure that you hit that federal rebate, just make sure you get it built without that add-on package. So if you want that heads-up display, you just may not be eligible for the federal rebate, unfortunately. But overall look and styling inside this thing is great. I do notice that a lot of EVs specifically go for this style rim versus the traditional split spoke wheels and things like that we'll find in some other vehicles, but it still looks fairly nice. You could always customize these things with stickers and hydro dipping and all sorts of other things if you want to give it a little bit more of a unique look for your personality. Now we do have our LED headlamps, or daytime, nighttime running lamps. We've got our fogs down there as well. We've got our Hyundai badge right along the very front. We've got a nice aluminum look right along the very front, bottom part of the bumper there, and we've got these shutters that'll open and close as necessary, which is kind of neat. But I want you to take a peek underneath the hood of the vehicle to see what's going on with what they've done. I think it's kind of unique. Now, very similar to what you're going to find in the majority of gas-powered vehicles, getting underneath the hood, there's a simple latch to the left-hand side, and actually getting underneath this thing, just underneath the Hyundai badge, just drop your hand in there, you're just going to crank all the way to the left on hydraulics, which is definitely a nice thing. And I kind of love what Hyundai's done with this thing. They've really kind of taken the look of a regular gas-powered vehicle, and they've put it underneath the hood of this. We've got an engine cover down here that serves no functional purpose, but it just looks like it's a more traditional style gas vehicle instead. But it looks fairly nice. We've got those blue highlights that we saw on the outside of the vehicle that are carried through this little cover. And lifting this bad boy up, we've got a nice amount of storage space underneath here. So really useful. We need to store a few things. It's not a ton of space, but at the same time, if you need to throw a few extra things in there, you've got that flexibility. Then one of the best parts about owning an EV is how much stuff you're going to have to worry about maintaining. This is it. Well, with the exception of the brakes and the tires as well. But underneath the hood, this is all you're going to need to worry about. We've got a few fluids, specifically our washer fluid along the left-hand side there. And then we've got easy access to lights and things like that. So if you're handy, you want to change out a bulb yourself, you'd have the flexibility to do it. A little bit tighter on that passenger side in comparison to the driver, but not impossible all at the same time. All right, taking a peek along our driver's side door. So we do have this handle here, which is so neat. As you can see there, so I press it, it locks the door. I can press in order to unlock, and then it brings this handle out and sliding. And that's the same for the first, second row driver passenger side, so that's great. But take a peek at this interior. So nice. We'll get to the interior in just a second, but along the driver's side door there, we've got our base handle. We do also have this little position, this part right behind the door. So in order to be able to shut the door, we can grip onto any part of the door itself, which is fantastic. We've got this nice blue aftermarket highlight, which brings a little bit more uniqueness to the vehicle. We can control what's going on with our side view mirrors, left versus right side. We can also unlock, lock, basic window up and down. And we've got a little storage space along the driver's side and as well as the passenger side door. Along the bottom scuff plate, you can also make that out. We do have our Ioniq badge down there. And then moving up. So we can bring the seat forwards, backwards, up and down. We can also adjust the backrest there. And then we've got our two-way lumbar support. Moving on the inside, just to the left-hand side of the steering wheel, a few other options that are available there. So we can increase or decrease the brightness of the cluster screen, traction control on or off. We can turn on our auto hold setting. So this one's going to hold the vehicle in place when we come to a complete stop and take our foot off the brake. We've also got our parking brake. And then we also do have our manual telescoping steering wheel, so we just drop down and then adjust as necessary. And moving down to the side. So typical styling with most manufacturers, just to the left-hand side of the pedals. We also do have a release for the hood, so all we're gonna do is just give that a pull in order to get underneath. I love the way that the door's shut. Like, it's not a soft close like we'll find in some high-end luxury vehicles, but just closing the door, there's that entire part of the door itself that we can pull in order to close the doors, and that's for the first and the second row. It's pretty neat what Hyundai's decided to do with it. But overall first impressions of this vehicle, I think they did a really, really good job on the design of it. We've got this great looking cluster screen, multimedia screen that supports Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, and a number of great things, but I love it. I love it. We've got a speaker along the side. We've got them all over the place. This thing looks really sharp. Hyundai, good job. Next up, taking a peek at the steering wheel for the vehicle. So it's pretty straightforward, but there are still quite a few things to consider for this vehicle. So let's kind of go through different options that are available. Starting off, we've got our pad on the left-hand side. We've got a voice command prompt, which is going to let us do things like change songs, radio stations, things like that using our voice. You can see it go crazy on that screen there. We've got a mode button there, so we can push that in order to be able to adjust between our active presets and things like that. We have the flexibility through the media screen to be able to adjust those settings out. Check down the description below for that walk around instead. We've got another unique button that we can create to kind of do what we'd like it to do. We've got some flexibility there. We can answer or hang up on a phone call. We can increase or decrease the volume. We can push out in the middle to mute. And then we can go up and down in order to go between different presets as well. Along the right-hand side, we've got a few different options in order to go between different pages inside of that cluster screen. But I honestly love the look of it. Now this thing does have two different looks. This is the nighttime look, but we would have a bright white look if we're locked into the daytime mode instead, or if we have it switch out automatically for us. But moving forward, so we do have our little button there in order to get through individual pages. So we've got our main page there with our intention level. We can push OK if we want to in order to reset that out. Pushing again brings us back to our basic charge, which we can push and hold OK in order to reset all of this. Moving back, we've got our compass. If we had maps going, we would also have our navigation options coming up through the screen there. And we would have to drive in order to see our current tire pressure. Now what we're doing is going up and down between our different screens there as we go. We've got our button there, Smart Cruise. So this is the Smart Cruise button. So we actually have to be driving in order to be able to turn it on, but we turn the system on. Once we get to our ideal speed, we're just gonna press either plus or minus. So we're gonna go either up or down there in order to set our speed. So the Smart Cruise is an amazing one because what's going to happen is if we come up to if we're following a vehicle, they start slowing down, your vehicle will automatically start slowing down. If they brake, yours will come to a stop. If they pick up speed, change lanes, yours will pick back up to your set speed again. We've got a distance indicator. So how close or how far are we away from the vehicle that's in front of us? And then we've also got our lane follow assist. So this is an amazing system. I always recommend keeping it turned on. So what's going to happen is if you start to lose attention for a second, it's going to keep you fully balanced in your lane. Not fully self-driving, but pretty dang close all at the same time. So it is an amazing system from that perspective. And like I said, we can easily kind of go up and down between different settings here, which is kind of neat. So as you can see, we've got our main settings. We drop down to go to these sub settings. So we press and hold OK. And that jumps us into a series of other options, as you saw there on that screen. So that adjusts a few other things out as well. And we push this button again in order to go back to that main screen. And like I said, so we've got our lane centering system. We've got our follow. So how close or how far are we away from the vehicle in front of us? We do need to have that that smart cruise control on in order for that to work. But you will start to notice, so it's going to be up or down in order to figure out how close or how far are we away from the vehicle in front of us. But pretty straightforward. Quick little horn test. Oh, sounds kind of nice. And off to the left side, so we do have our different drive modes. So we've got our Eco versus Normal versus Sport mode. We can also press and hold the drive wheel button there in order to get to our Snow mode. But honestly, I personally recommend keeping it in the Sport mode if you're a little bit of a lead foot. I mean, this is an EV, so you've got a crazy amount of torque, but inside of that mode, it is absolutely amazing. And from there, so this isn't a rotary dial, it's just a button press to change out modes. Now, a few other things. We are going to be a manual telescoping steering wheel, so we can go in and out, up and down as necessary. Just going to keep it in a lower position for a second, because we've got a series of different sticks that you can see there. Stick on the left-hand side is going to let us adjust what's going on with our lights. I always just recommend keeping to the auto setting. We can flash out our high beams there if we want to. And then the stick along the right-hand side is going to be for our windshield wipers, so we can easily adjust there as necessary. We can select what speed we're currently going to, and then all we're going to do is pull in towards us for that front windshield wiper if we want to have it going very, very easily. And then you can just kind of make this stick out here. I'm going to drop it for you a little bit. Actually, before I get to that stick, I'm going to show you the paddle shifters. So we have two little paddle shifters there, but what I want to do, I'm actually going to have to shift into drive for this to happen. So we're going to go into drive, and watch this. So you can see there, we're jumping between different regen modes. So we've got our base 0 mode. We've got 1 versus 2 versus 3. Once we're in 3, we push it one more time. That enters what's known as I-pedal mode. And that's going to be our one pedal driving. So rather than having to worry about the gas brake, you're literally just worrying about the one pedal in order to be able to accelerate. You take your foot off the gas and it's automatically going to decelerate the vehicle fairly rapidly as well. So it's all tied into that regen braking system. We can turn it off very simply by pressing over again. So in order to enter it on the left-hand side, we just kind of adjust as necessary there. You get to the max one more time in order to turn it on. Stick on the right in order to, or the paddle shift, I should say, on the right-hand side in order to turn it off. So it's that simple to be able to use the paddle shifters inside of the vehicle. And I promise, so let's move down a tiny little bit. And crazy sock day today, ha ha ha. All right, so stick on the right-hand side, series of options available. We do have our drive, shift down for neutral, bigger shift in order to get into reverse. And then on the very tip of the stick there, we also do have a little button. We're gonna push that in order to drop the vehicle down into park. So we go up, so up 2 for drive, down 1 for neutral, big down for reverse. So it is a very smart system there, so you can't accidentally trigger reverse or whatever the case may be accidentally. If you want a test drive of what this thing's like in full 360 VR, check down below because I've put together a comprehensive video there. It's kind of neat all at the same time, but so many good features available. And like I said, with the media screen, hold on, I got to do this first. Amazing song, amazing sound. This is absolutely amazing. Like the sound inside of this thing is really, really nice. You could always do aftermarket upgrades if you really wanted to, but I think for most people, like probably 98% of people, the audio in this thing will be good enough as is. Next up, let's take a peek at the media screen for the vehicle. So this thing looks absolutely amazing. We've got our base home screen here, which as we can see on the bottom left-hand side, figure out exactly what station's currently playing. We've got our current battery percentage, what our current range is. We've got a little handy map on top of that. So a few different options available. We've got our current time and then our guest. So whatever profile is currently engaged. We've got our guest, or we can change users, which is useful if you're gonna have multiple people driving the vehicle. You can set up a number of different profiles, which is amazing. Up along the very top, we've got our base back button. Hopping back inside, we've got our home icon, or we can press this hamburger button in order to turn the display off. Button press to bring it back to life. We can push again in order to search for different settings, so we can figure out exactly what settings we want if we want to go to like different things like climate. But if we press the home button again, it's going to take us back to this main screen, so we can kind of swipe as necessary to get to each individual menu there. So it's going to dive through each menu as we go, and I'm going to teach you everything you need to know. Starting off, we've got our base EV settings. So we look there and we can see again what we saw on the home screen. We've got our current battery percentage. We've got our nearest charge station. We've got so currently we've got the climate going. So if we were to turn the climate off there, we can see there that it's adjusted as necessary on the fly. So it's given us a boost of about 10 kilometers when we've turned that off, which is a nice thing. Now we do have this main screen, which we can hit this button along the side in order to give us a split screen instead. Another button press in order to hide it. We do have a little button along the side there in order to figure out other options for our EV settings. So we've got our DC charger, we can see what's going on there, as well as our AC charge percentages. We've got our charging current, our winterized mode, which is going to help out with battery deterioration in the winter time. And then we've got different activity modes there. So we've got different utility modes, I should say. We've got our next departure time, and we can also schedule certain things as well, which is very useful. So where this comes into play is if you're going to be going and leaving at different or the same time of the day every day. So what we can do is we can schedule our departure times, and we can schedule it for both charging and climate. So if you want to, let's say, charge overnight when electricity rates are cheaper, we can schedule that to do it. If we want to have the climate come on, let's say 5 minutes before we have to leave, we've got the flexibility to do that on top of that. We've got this, as you can see there, so our current electricity transfer. And moving back down, that's going to be the base settings for the EV there. We've got our map setting next. So this is our factory navigation built in. As you can see there, it is fairly responsive. We've got our nice pinch to zoom available. We've got this along the top to bring us back to center again. We've got our current direction there, and we can kind of adjust true north versus the direction we're actually facing. We've got options for our navigation volume. So as we come up to an upcoming turn, do we want the voice and then sound effect? Yes or no? And then if we want it, you can hear it there.
Guidance will be at this volume.
So it's kind of neat. And then we can also have navigation volume priority. So if we've got the radio blasted, and we're coming to an upcoming turn, with that setting enabled, what that's going to do is lower all the other volumes in order for us to be able to hear what's going on with our navigation instead. We can do a plus minus there if we want to. I guess we can also do a pinch to zoom. We've also got our auto mode. And then we've got some options for searching. So we get search there, and we can easily just start typing in an address, and we're going to give it a second. So we're going to go type some things in, and we can kind of adjust. I'm not sure why it's doing that. So let's say 570 King. What's it going to do there? So it gives us a series of options available. Let's just choose a random one. We can set it as our destination. And there we go. So we've got the route that's come up. We've got our alternative routes that are available there. So we can choose one or the other. We can start guidance. We can add in waypoints. So if we need to make a pit stop along the way, we can set that up. And we can also avoid certain things. So if we want to avoid freeways, toll roads, and things like that. So let's say if we want to avoid toll roads, let's recalculate. So it's given us that route with a secondary alternative route now. So we do have quite a little bit of flexibility there. And moving back out again, we've got this main section, and we've got either our best or we've got some options for distance. We've got the flexibility to also search using our voice. So we can search for point of interest icons and a number of other things by going that route instead. Then we can also X out if we want to go that route. We've got a number of different options along the side there, so you can see different places that people have, well, quite a few places that people have taken this car so far. It's kind of neat. We've got our home and work address that we can set up on top of that. Now, we've got the flexibility if we're on the home screen, we can kind of swipe across to get into the map, but there also is a hot button press down there. So we can just press navigation or map if we want to. So pressing map will bring us into the map. Pressing nav will bring us into our navigation menu. So we've got our point of interest icons, save places, Hyundai dealerships. We can add in multiple favorite addresses along the side on top of that. Button press in order to get out of that, and then button press again in order to get back to the home screen here. So very, very simple in order to go through our map as well as the navigation menu, which we saw by pressing that navigation button. But point of interest icons and a number of other options that are available. So as we saw that earlier, we've got EV charging stations, ATMs, banks, things like that. And let's go back home, and then we've got our navigation menu down. So next up is adding a phone. So adding a phone inside of the vehicle is pretty straightforward. If we just hit the phone button. All right, so we press the phone button and we've got quite a few different options. So a number of phones that have already been connected. We can add in, we can go to settings, or we can cancel. So let's go add.
Bluetooth on from your device in order to search. On your device, select the name that matches vehicle name on the screen.
And we're just waiting for Ioniq5 to show up, and it has, so we're just going to press that button there. Numbers match up. Hey, do we want to allow favorites and contacts to sync up? Yeah, we can allow that for now. All right, and we should be fully connected. So let's go back into phone for a second. There we go. It's downloading my contacts there. So we've got that. We've got my contact books. We've got my number there as well. We've also got our voice command prompt. And if we've got multiple phones connected, we can press the button along the very top right-hand side in order to be able to swap out phones as necessary. We do have this little slider there, so we press that. And again, that gives us our little split screen, or we can hide it as necessary. But it's very straightforward. So now we go back home. Now we've got a few different options for media and things like that. So we can press the media button down there. And that gives us our main media there. We can kind of adjust in order to go to different media now. So we've got AM, FM, SiriusXM, Android Auto and Apple CarPlay are grayed out because I'm not currently connected. We've got my Bluetooth audio on my phone, and we've got sounds of nature, which we'll get to in just a moment. So we can close that out very simply. Now, actually, why don't we do this while we're here? So we're going back into phone, and as you can see, So as you can see here, we've got our phone we can hop back into, or we've got our phone projection. So as of right now, I'm not currently connected. So let's go through the process of setting up Android Auto and Apple CarPlay inside the vehicle. All right, starting off on the Apple CarPlay side of things, we're just going to take our USB cable and put it into the lower USB port. From there, opposite end of the cable, we're just going to plug ourselves in. Do we want to allow CarPlay while the phone is locked? Yes, we want to allow that. While using CarPlay, certain information will be available. We have to activate Siri. Perfect, and it should take a second there, and we should be, boom, connected, and beautiful full screen, which is amazing. But as you can see, we've got everything connected there. We've got my Apple Maps, we've got Google Maps, and we've got Waze, and we can use any of these systems. Oh, let's cancel that out. We can literally adjust as necessary here if we want to. So we can kind of do a pinch to zoom, we can swipe around, we can go back to the main screen there, we can launch into Google Maps. Live One is a radio app, so certain apps will work directly through this middle screen. Spotify, YouTube Music, things like that, you will have to connect over Bluetooth instead in order to play those. Like I mentioned, even if you had the YouTube app on your phone, you wouldn't be able to stream video through this middle screen whatsoever. But one of the nice things is that we do have a lot of flexibility as to how this thing looks and reacts. So if we go into our general settings on our phone, we go into CarPlay, we select the car, we can customize, and then from there we've got a series of different options available. So if you're a big fan of listening to your podcasts, you can move it to the top. If you want your audiobooks up there as well, so we can kind of adjust as necessary. We can also delete things which show up at the bottom here, but they're not on the screen now. So if you want to, you can add it back in. You can do a drag and drop on that hamburger button there to bring it back. And if you don't like what you've done, you've played around with it too much, we just do a reset in order to bring this thing back to the factory defaults instead. So very straightforward. Right now, setting up an Android device is the exact same process. If we're on this main screen there, all we're going to do is jump into our setup. We've got our device connections and a series of options available. So we've got our current device connections. We've got, as you can see, all the different phones that have been connected. That phone that I connected earlier, if we want to have it as our favorite, we can just do a drag to the top, and that's going to save that as a favorite device instead. We've currently got my phone and the music connected for it. If we want to, we can also go delete device, and we can delete this device if we want to. Just hit delete, yes. And it should take a second. 3, 2, 1, the phone is deleted, and it's that simple to be able to delete the device. And now adding in the Android.
Bluetooth on from your device in order to search. On your device, select the name that matches vehicle name on the screen.
Perfect. Helps if I have this pulled up, and we've got the Ioniq5 there. Perfect. Let's add in. And as you can see there, we're fully connected. So it's that simple to be able to do it. Exactly what we saw on the iPhone side of things. Now, on the phone, it's also asking, do I want to allow access to contacts, messages, things like that? I'm just going to hit no for now, but you do have the flexibility to add it back in if you want to. So we've got the options there of going through. If we hit the home button now and jump into phone, we've got the phone that I've just connected. So we've got my phone pad there, we've got my command prompt, and we can also swap out phones along the top. And then along the bottom, I forgot to point this out on the iPhone side of things, but we also have the phone name, as well as our current status for both the connection as well as for our battery. So pretty straightforward. And we do have options. So if we hop back into our media for a second, so we go back into our media again, and we've got Bluetooth audio, which would be pulling directly from my phone instead. But very similar to the iPhone side of things, we can easily set up Android Auto. We just take our USB cable there, plug it into that front USB port, opposite end of the cable, right into the phone. And Android Auto would like to, so we're just going to hit next there. Okay. There we go, perfect. So it took a couple seconds there, but it has launched in. Now, unfortunately, as you can see there, we are just going to be a split screen. So we don't have the option for full screen inside of Android Auto specifically. Apparently there is supposed to be an update coming in late 2022, which will give us that full screen functionality, but it's not there as of yet. But we do have our Google Maps, and this phone does have Waze installed. Unfortunately, Waze as of right now is not compatible using Android Auto. So I wish it's there, unfortunately not yet, but we still do have all of our Google Map functionality there if you want to use it. We can jump into our podcast as well if we're using that. We've got music, notifications, and then our Google Assistant. And then we can also press and hold the button on the steering wheel in order to activate our Google Assistant. But we actually could have done that on the iPhone side of things for our Siri Assistant as well. So we do have quite a little bit of flexibility there. Pressing this button along the very bottom left will bring us back to this main screen. And then we can also press the Hyundai button along the very bottom there in order to jump back into the Hyundai main menu instead. So we've got quite a little bit of flexibility, which is always a nice thing. Now, we do also have the option of adjusting, so we can change out a few different settings on the Apple CarPlay or the Android Auto side of things. So on our phone, we're just going to hit search for Android Auto. Once we do, we're going to go Android Auto. We've got our currently connected car. We can customize the launcher. So if we want to, very similar to the iPhone side. One thing to note though, so let's hop into Android Auto, go back home. Go back home. There we go. So as you can see there, podcasts, I actually moved to the front, but it hasn't adjusted it there. We actually have to disconnect Android Auto from the vehicle. We have to restart our phone as well, the Android Auto specifically, in order for any changes to take into effect. So it's not dynamically going to update the same way it does in the Apple CarPlay side of things, but you still have the flexibility to customize it if you want to. Moving down, we've got our Google detection. So you could say, okay, Google. As you can see there, it launches in there. We can also say a few other options. We've got Google Assistant and a few other things that are available. So not as much flexibility as what we had on the Apple side of things, but there still is a nice amount of functionality inside of it if you are using an Android device instead. But I do like that we've got Google Maps that we can use. It's one of my preferred map applications if Waze isn't available. Then we can easily, as we saw earlier, press the Hyundai button to move back home. We can literally pull out, that's what she said, in order to disconnect that way. We jump into the phone again and we're back to the phone. We can go swap devices if we want to change it out to a different device, or we move into our home screen. We go into our setup. Oh, there we go. Setup along the bottom, device connections, and we've got our Bluetooth prompts. So if we want to, we can play or mute different prompts. We can go into different privacy modes. We've got our Bluetooth system info. So if you want to change your car name or the password, we can do it there. We've also got our phone projection settings. So we've got Android Auto, Apple CarPlay. Now this is a little bit misleading because we didn't have that checked off, but it was still split screen. So that's a bug that's going to be updated soon. You're not going to be able to get full screen Android Auto inside of the Ioniq as of yet. We've got also split screen on the Apple CarPlay side. So if we want to go split screen, we would just go here in order to adjust as necessary. Then moving back, we've got device connections. And as you can see, all the different devices that have been connected, we can easily just select whatever device we want to delete. We just select, delete, yes. And 3, 2, 1, the phone is now deleted from the vehicle, and it's that simple, setting up both Android Auto and Apple CarPlay inside of the Ioniq. We've got some options for our climate, and it looks really, really nice the way this is. So you can see there, we do have dual zone climate control, so different driver passenger side. We've got our front heat. We've got the AC running. We can sync it up to whatever the driver side is. So let's say if the passengers are different, we just hit sync, brings it back to whatever the driver's default is. We've got our driver only option if we want to go that route. We've got our different fan speeds. If we wanted to adjust there, we could easily do it. Oh, so crazy. We can turn off if we want to. So we do have some climate control settings there. We also have them a little bit further down the center stack if we wanted to use that instead. Pushing this button, do we want it to go to our windshield face feet or any sort of weird combination of them? Moving back home, we've also got our warmers. So we could turn on our heated steering wheel if we want to, as well as our heated and ventilated heated front seats, I should say. And then a few other options. So we can activate our different things based off of our washer fluid use. And then we've got a few other options. So we've got our circulation modes, dehumidify, we've got ventilation, and then we've got our option again to jump back into our front climate. So front climate versus front warmer, we can button press in order to move between those screens if we want to. Like I said, we've got a few other options along the very bottom. And from there, we've got some options for our cluster. So illumination, we do have the flexibility of adjusting it by our left knees. As you can see there, it's kind of moving as I push the button there. Or we can adjust it through this middle screen instead. We've got a blue light filter to help in order to relieve strain on our eyes if we're going to be driving later on at night. And you can also select how intense you want that blue light filter to be, which is kind of a neat thing. We've got other options, so we can automatically have it come on, or we can schedule it to come on at certain times of the day. And then we've got our extended rear camera. So really useful if you're going to be in gear as you're driving forward in order to keep that back view instead. Options for our climate, we can recirculate air if we want to. So whenever we use our fluid, we can have that happen. And then we've got different air circulation and ventilation modes. We've got some defog and defrost, so the vehicle will automatically do that for us as necessary. And then climate, so we've also got our auto AC drying. I believe, there we go, so we've got some options for lights. Turn signal, do we want to have it so that it's just a single turn that we get? So you can hear it there versus, let's say, a 5. So you can select either 1, 3, 5, or 7. We've got our headlight delay, which means that when we go to lock the vehicle, do we want our lights to stay on? And then our high beam assist, which is useful. So what's going to happen is if the vehicle senses that there's an oncoming vehicle, it's automatically going to reduce the high beam in order to not blind the driver that's in front of you. Moving back, we've got our door. So do we want to have the vehicle lock automatically based off of our speed or as we shift out of park? And do we want to have it unlock automatically when we turn the vehicle into park, when we turn the vehicle off, or do we just not want it to happen whatsoever and we have to manually unlock the doors instead? Approach unlock, so as we go to approach the vehicle, do we want the doors unlocking? Do we want to have to 2-button press unlock in order to unlock all the doors? And then we also have a remote window control, which means that we've got the flexibility to open and close the windows from just using the key fob. So such an amazing feature. I love that it's so simple to use all at the same time. Options for some convenience settings, so rear occupant alert. When we go to turn the vehicle off, we're going to get a message inside of our little cluster screen there, letting us know to check the back to make sure we haven't forgotten about any kids back there, or pets, whatever the case may be. I believe that may have been the basics there. Keyboard language, what did I forget? Vehicle settings. I think that's it. Perfect. Vehicle settings are done. Next up, we've got, vehicle navigation. So series of different options for navigation there. We can choose our different font sizes if we want. Point of interest display. Do we want to show everything? Charging stations, cafes, pharmacies, etc. We've also got our different symbols. So if we want to change it out to something a little bit more personalized, we can. Options for display, so we can have it auto recenter as we get closer to our destination. Do we want to return to the map for timing? And then we've got some basic information. So what other things do you want to show? Current vehicle speed, that's kind of a neat one to have all the time. Our speed limits on the roads that we're currently traveling on. Options for guidance. Do we want to show our different guidance intervals? So our distance intervals, I should say. So how close are we coming to the upcoming turn? Voice guidance. Do we want to mute out the voice guidance option? We've got our border crossing. And then we've got some options for alert. Oh, I think there was one I missed there. Back and others, Of course, the generic others. We've got our previous destinations, so we can not save previous destinations. We can hide all these different options if we want to. Really useful if you want to be a little bit more private, and if you're going to be having a valet park your vehicle, our previously saved destinations just won't save, which is nice. We've got some options for user data, so if you're changing vehicles out, and our base GPS location. So if you're lost, not sure where you are, you can just plug these coordinates in to see exactly where you are. And moving back, device connections, which we saw earlier. So we've got all of our basics for phone projection and things like that. Back again, we've also got user profiles, which we saw when we were on the home screen, so we can adjust and create a number of different profiles. I believe the magic number on this one is 5 unique profiles that you can create. Voice recognition, so we've got either our beginner, normal, or expert mode. Expert mode means that things as we change, so we press the voice command prompt on the steering wheel. When we're in our expert mode, we're not going to get as many notifications as we go to do certain things. So change songs, radio stations, things like that, it'll just do it rather than prompting us. And next up, we've got our screen theme and layout. So we've got our black theme going right now. We can change it out to either white or black, or we can schedule the different displays to come on. So I'd say the black would be more like our nighttime display instead, versus the white, which as you can see there, nice and bright, that'll be more of our daytime instead. But I personally love the look of the black one. It just looks really nice in this media screen setup. Options for screensaver. So as we go to turn the display off, nothing's there. We can have a digital clock instead if we want to. Oh, wrong button. We can have a digital display if we want to instead for a clock, or we've also got the analog clock instead. Options for split screen. So what's showing up on split screen? Do we want the electric vehicle information to show up? Do we want our weather, compass, clock, etc.? Then we can just do a drag and drop in order to adjust which one's going to be showing up first, just by pressing and holding that little hamburger icon there. Next up, we've got some options for our display. So we saw this one earlier, illumination, things like that. We've got a few unique buttons. We've got one on the steering wheel, and then we've got a few others as well that we can create in order to create our own unique ones. So we've got a mode button on the steering wheel. So what happens when we press that? Does it navigate us between all these different options? So definitely setting that up. custom button on the steering wheel. When we press that, what do we want it to do? And then we've also got our custom button, which is a little bit further down, so right down there. When we press that button, what do we want it to do? Do we want it to jump home, jump to our EV, which I think the EV would probably make sense in this case. And that's the basics there. For our buttons, you can see we can adjust as necessary there. Our volume tuning, we can also adjust and tweak these out if we want to swap these out. And we've got our blue link, so we do have to have our feature enrollment, but it is nice because we can do things like remote start the vehicle, roll the windows up and down, things like that, using the blue link app on our phones. We do need to be enrolled in order to get those features, but it is there as an option. And then a series of general settings. So we've got our current platform. We can see exactly what software version we've got. We can do an over-the-air update if we want to. System information, we can see how much storage the vehicle's currently got. We've got our user manual, so all we'd have to do is pull that up. Just scan it using our, there we go. Boom. Okay. And then all we have to do is scan, go to that link along the very top, and that's going to pull us into our online user's manual instead. Date and time, do we want to set it to our GPS location, 12/24-hour mode? Our language, do we want to go English, French, Spanish, or Korean? Different options for our keyboard, as well as for the units, for our measurement units there. So a series of other options available. We've got some different things for media, or we can just do a reset in order to bring it back to our factory default screen instead. That's it for the setup. And jumping over, we've got our radio. So we've got our old kind of like knob look there, which is kind of neat. We can easily save presets out as well. So we just press this little star button along the side in order to save out presets as necessary. We do have a little tuning knob there that we can kind of push up and down in order to change. We can also do a press and hold if we wanted to seek that way instead. So we've got quite a few different options available. Quick little audio test again. Amazing sound, amazing band, amazing song, fantastic all around. We can also move this way. We can press this in order to change between AM, FM, SiriusXM, or if we want to, we can press the little media button there in order to jump in additional media. So AM, FM, SiriusXM, Bluetooth, we've got the option for a USB stick with MP3s on it as well. Moving back, too far. Let's go home, and where were we? Media, we've got Blue Link, which we saw earlier, and then our notifications. So Blue Link, you do need to have that set up in order to see if there are any active notifications for your vehicle. And then we've got our user manual. Now, one thing I didn't show you yet, if we go back into our media, would be, let's go media again, our sounds of nature. So if you're a bigger fan of like those soothing sounds, like, yeah, listen to this. So nice relaxing forest, and we've got a few different options that are available if you're a bigger fan of those ambient noises instead of going through the radio instead. Now, one thing to point out, this does have the option for a heads-up display, which this specific one doesn't. In the States, in your Limited, you will have the heads-up display standard. In Canada, you need an add-on package in order to be able to get the heads-up display, but it is so nice to have that as an option. Not necessary though, because at the same time, it still is really nice as is. And as we start to move down a little bit, so let's brighten you up a little bit, make it a teeny bit easier to see, but a series of other options. So we can push that in order to turn the radio on or off. We can adjust our volume there. Hot button press in order to get to our map, to our navigation menu, to our media. And then we've got a unique button that we can set up there. So this specific case, I do have it set up for our EV instead, but we can adjust as necessary. We've got our little P button there, so we can pull up our reverse camera. And then we've got our parking sensors. So our reverse parking sensors, if you don't want to use it, you can turn that off. We are push button start inside the vehicle. We can change what's going on with our temperature. So we are dual zone climate control inside of this. We can push down here in order to turn it off. So if you've got it going, it's going high. So crazy. We can adjust and turn it off there. We've got our climate settings versus our warmer settings there as well. We can have it go to our windshield, face, feet, any sort of combination in between. And it's pretty straightforward, but I do love the nice little look and layout there. It's kind of got this interesting feel. I kind of love what they've done with the Ioniq here, so pretty straightforward. And as we start to move down a little bit more. Now, I mentioned earlier, so these little blue highlights, that's because this is done aftermarket. So it's a very, very unique look, I think, compared to what you traditionally see inside of the vehicle. But we do have a USB port, as well as a 12-volt power point there as well. And we've got a big storage tray down there on top of that. As we move down from there, you can make it out, but we do have 2 cup holders. So 2 cup holders again with that blue highlight that's done aftermarket. And then you can make it out there. We do have 2 USB ports, so 2 standard USB ports as well. But we have this armrest, which is kind of neat because we've got a little storage tray inside of it with a fully removable piece if we need to clean it out. We can also lift this thing up, almost like we can create a little jump seat. You can't, but it's almost like you kind of could. If you had like a little fur baby maybe, that could be like a little pocket-sized dog, you could kind of stick them there, but here nor there. But we do have, like I said, a few USB ports and a nice amount of storage on top of that. Now, as we start to move up overhead, the dash looks fairly nice. We've kind of got some plastics that are married throughout part of the dash all the way throughout, so it's kind of got nice congruency there. Up overhead a bit more, we do have our manual dimming rear view mirror, our tow mode, SOS mode, our base cabin control lights, which is kind of neat. So we've got a few different options. Ooh. Oh, hold on. Is that a touch? Oh, that's cool. Okay, so we can turn on all the lights overhead there, or we can just button press. Okay, yeah, or we can just button press to turn on one side or the other. Oh, that is so neat. It looks so cool at the same time. Now from there, this specific one is just the standard roof. So there isn't any sort of option for a panoramic roof, like a sunroof, things like that, with the exception of when you get into that higher package in the preferred in Canada or the limited in the States. And you've got your dual pane, so full open glass instead. Looks really, really nice inside of this thing, but this specific one doesn't have it, so the lower trims won't have it, but it will be standard when you get into those higher trim levels. We do also have vanity mirror in there, which does also have, so our visor, vanity mirror, we've got our light that's up over top there, and it's got a little business card holder, and this thing slides out to block everything. So I love it when cars do that, when they block every little bit of sun that may potentially be hitting your face. There is an assist handle in the driver passenger side for the first and the second row. So if you need it, which this thing kind of has a teeny little bit of power, like a little bit, you'll probably need it, but it is nice all at the same time. Like I said, like seat comfort wise is fantastic. This is nice. We can easily adjust the seats, but with the seat all the way down, like I'm 6 feet tall. So seat all the way down and back, this is ridiculous. I've got like 6, almost 7 inches of headspace there. That is ridiculous. So if you're taller than 6 feet, like 6'5", 6'7", you'll probably be able to fit in this thing, no problem. The second row of the Ioniq is surprisingly spacious. Like I'm 6 feet tall and very similar to that first row, I've got a ton of space, like 3 inches of headspace back here with the driver's seat set up for somebody who's 6 feet tall. Great amount of knee space, good amount of foot space, which is amazing. But overall, this thing is very comfortable. The seats have a good amount of cushion to them. And realistically, you could probably fit 3 of me. It'd be tight for 3 full-size versions of me. But if you had like a mini me in the middle there, probably be able to fit no problem. Now we do have anchors and tether points and things like that in the front and back of the seats. So front-facing, rear-facing child seats aren't going to be an issue in this thing whatsoever. But the styling inside of this thing is really nice. Like very similar to what we saw inside of the first row. We've got these beautiful highlights along the door, and it's nice, it's simple, it's elegant. Like this is well put together. One thing I like, we do have the climate control settings for both the driver, passenger, and the second row along the door. So we can adjust the fan speed, we can adjust where the actual fan is blowing in that back row, which is amazing. Behind the armrest of that first row, we do have 2 power points, so just regular USB. And then we've got a little storage pocket back there as well. And speaking of storage pockets, behind the driver passenger first row, we do also have a few cargo nets there, so we can store some things along the door. And even along the driver passenger door, we do have some storage space there. We do also have some cup holders. So a few cup holders there, bottle holders along the door. But one thing that's kind of unique is like as we pop these things open, closing the door, like the entire lip of the door for the driver, even for the first row, it's neat. Like it's kind of got this grip all throughout, so you can just grab any part of it in order to be able to shut the door. So it is neat the way that Hyundai's decided to design the interior of this thing. I love it. We do also have the option so we can increase, decrease the headrest there, and it's just a single way adjust. But nice, we've got our typical, so handles along the top, a little hook just along the driver's side, nothing on the passenger. And we can also control the cabin lights, oh nice LEDs, from that back row as well. But like I said, overall styling inside of this thing, look is great. I think Hyundai's kind of hit a home run with this car at the price point they have. This thing looks fantastic. Next up, taking a peek at the key fob for the vehicle. So typical Hyundai styling, we've got our Hyundai badge along the very back. We've also got our emergency access key there as well. Now, moving towards the front side of the fob, we've got our lock button, our unlock button, our horn or panic alarm, there's remote start, and then we can also gain access to the charge door, which is kind of neat. But remote starting, all we're going to do is make sure the door is locked, and then we just press and hold the bottom button there in order to be able to remote start. So pretty straightforward. But one of the cool things is what's going on with this hold button there. So all we do is press and hold, but watch what happens when we do. So we've got our charge door that opens up. We can press and hold again in order to close the charge door, which is amazing. I love that we can do that directly from the key fob. Now that's great, but we do also have the flexibility on the outside to be able to open up the charge door as well. Now one thing, the vehicle's locked right now, so we can't open it up until we unlock. So we unlock and we can press and up it goes. So we've got a few different ways that we can charge this thing up, which is nice. Charge times are going to vary. With obviously we use supercharging is going to be able to charge us up the fastest, but you've got your options if you need to. If you only have access to a level 1 charger, it will charge it. It's just going to take a very long time to do it in comparison to our standard level 2s. But charge numbers are going to kind of be all over the place there. We do have a charge indicator, so how full are we? We've got a few other options down there as well, so if we need to get to our faster charger, and then we can also, like I mentioned, use the key fob if we want to open and close, but we've got another handy little button there, to close this thing down. Now the back end of the vehicle is fairly nice. We've got our Ioniq badge that's just right below our Hyundai badge along the top there. We've got nice tail lamps there. It's interesting. It's kind of neat the way that Hyundai's done this. It looks fairly sharp and super unique. And we get into those blue highlights that were done aftermarket, which make this thing pop that tiny little bit more. We do have our backup camera, and that's a North American standard. You're always going to have the backup camera inside this vehicle. So that's always there, and we do have our park sensing system. So those reverse sensors, that beeping that we get as we back up, that is available. We do also have the option for factory towing. It's not like you're able to pull a ton with this thing, but if you're going to be pulling a small trailer, a bike, or you have a bike rack carrier, whatever the case may be, this thing will actually be able to support it. Now, one thing you may not be able to see from your vantage point, but because of the spoiler, the way that it's raised up along the very top there, we can kind of see through from this vantage point, which is kind of neat. But we don't have any sort of rear windshield wiper on this thing whatsoever. But at the same time, it still looks fairly nice. Getting into the trunk of the vehicle is also straightforward. So right above our license plate, so just to the right-hand side of that backup camera, there's a button there. So we're just going to pull that in order to release. But let's have a peek at the cargo dimensions. The cargo dimensions for the Ioniq are going to be showing up, and we've got a few different measurements that are available there. But the cargo area is fairly nice because this essentially is a hatchback. So we do have quite a little bit of space in that back row, which is definitely a nice thing. And you can make it out just behind the second row seats, but we do have our anchors and tethers, which means that front-facing, rear-facing child seats, you're not going to have an issue whatsoever. Now, folding down the second row is a little bit easy to do, but we can't actually do it from the trunk area. We have to be inside the vehicle. So we're just going to hop inside. We have our little release, and down it goes. So it's a 60-40 split, so 60 driver, 40 passenger. And one of the neat things is that when the seats are down, it actually stays locked down. So you have to physically lift it back up yourself using the handle. So if we crank this, it's not going to move. We have to take that lever in order to lift this thing back up. But I mean, it's super straightforward to do it all at the same time. But if we need to, we can fold down one side or the other. Like I said, 60-40 split. So we've got that flexibility if we need it. Now, along the left-hand side of the cargo area, we do have a little power point. So a 12-volt power point, it's 180 watt, that's in the back there. So we can power up quite a few things. We do have 4 tie-downs as well. So one in the back here, one a little bit further up along that wheel well, and that's going to be the same for the driver and for the passenger side. Now, on top of that, we've also got this tray. That's fully removable, which I always love it when they're fully removable like that. In Hyundai, all of their trays always removable, super straightforward. But underneath, we've got everything that we need essentially for the electric side of things. We've got our tire mobility kit that appears to be, oh yeah, that's in there. Whew, that's Velcroed down, and that is Velcroed down like crazy. We've got our tire mobility kit. We've also got our charger, which it's a 20-foot cable that's going to be included from the factory. And we've got a few other things. So we've got a few other pieces for our cargo nets and a few other things back there on top of that. But fairly straightforward, but there isn't too much stuff back here otherwise. It's nice and simple. They've stripped down the weight that you're gonna have just because of the nature of electric. You don't wanna have too much weight inside of this thing. Along the right side of the cargo area, not too much back here. We don't have any sort of power points along the right side by default, but we do have some wiring provisions. So it does look like we'd have the flexibility of being able to install something ourselves back here if we absolutely need it. All right, here we go. All right, what I'm gonna do, we're gonna go for a little bit of a drive. I'm gonna circle back and, oh, that's nice. Oh, that is nice. Okay, hold on. So what I'm playing with the paddle shifters right now, and it's all to do with regenerative braking. So the higher the level, it feels like the faster it's going to brake for you at the same time, which is kind of neat. Okay, I want to just double check that to make sure that's the case, but okay, so I'm going to go into the lowest mode possible, which in theory, yeah, it provides like next to no resistance for regenerative braking, versus if I'm on level 3, I feel, oh yeah, I can already feel it. Like it feels like it wants to slow down. Oh yeah, there it is. Yeah, that's exactly what's going on. So level 3 is going to slow down like it's like your max regenerative braking. You can feel the difference that makes. Like it's kind of ridiculous. And then there also is the option for one pedal driving. So that means that we don't have to worry about using the brake whatsoever. Oh, it's so weird. Okay, we can still use the brake, but in theory, you don't need to worry about using the brake with a one pedal drive because it's going to slow us down very quickly. Wow. Wow, that's neat. Okay, so the one pedal drive is amazing. Whether you go one pedal or not, oh, so I'm in sport mode right now, so like realistically, going one pedal driving doesn't necessarily make sense, but at the same time, you've got the flexibility to use it if you want to. Oh, but this is nice. This is really, really nice. Oh, that's priced, I should say, at that perfect level. Because in Canada, you can get a federal rebate for EV vehicles of up to $5,000 right now if it's $55,000 or less. This vehicle rings up at under $55,000, so technically you would be eligible for the federal rebate, and then there's also an Ontario rebate if you're a business owner on top of that. So there are all sorts of great incentives for this thing. This is pretty nice though. Super comfortable drive. The seat itself is actually pretty nice. Like it's just a cloth seat, but at the same time it's comfortable. Now one of the cool things is this is also past its break-in period, which means we can also have a little bit of fun with it. So, oh, that's nice. Instant torque. Instant torque. I love it. I love EVs for that reason alone. Just the sheer amount of power that these things can push out is amazing. Now, I have turned the smart cruise control system on, so we've got the option of easily doing that. And it's straightforward. So we can set 1 kilometer, 1 mile per hour at a time. We can adjust as necessary. We've got a distance indicator. So how close or how far are we away from the vehicle in front of us? And then there also is a lane centering button. So that lane centering, what that's going to do is keep us perfectly balanced in our lane as we go. But we've got the option for one pedal driving, which, you know what? I'm actually going to try that on the highway here. So I'm going to go into, there we go. You heard that click? Okay, let's do this. Instant torque! So good. So good. But the downside of that one pedal driving, so I'm currently going 100 right now. I take my foot off the gas and it like slowed down almost instantly. But one of the benefits with that one pedal drive is it's going to help out with with recharging the battery as you drive. So it is a really, really nice system. It takes a little bit of getting used to that one pedal driving, but it will bring you down to a complete stop. But like stark comparison, because without that mode on, I'm just in regular mode right now. So 0 technically on the regen braking scale. And it's like driving a regular gas vehicle. Like I'm on the highway right now, so taking my foot off of the gas, in a gas vehicle, you'd slow down very slowly. And that's exactly what's happening here. So foot's off the gas in like 96, 95, 94. It's slowing me down very slowly, but it still is like what you'd find in a traditional gas vehicle. This is really nice though. Well, that was a look at the 2022 Ioniq 5, and this thing is fantastic. I love what Hyundai's done with it. Their jump into this EV world, I think, is amazing, and at the price point that they've got it at with the feature sets, this is a top contender for a lot of people, especially as an entry-level vehicle. Like, you've got all sorts of options. You're looking at Tesla, the Mach-E Mustang, and a few other things, but it's going to be hard to compete with it at this price point. I think Hyundai, you've done an excellent job here. But What did you think? If you have any questions, you want to bounce some ideas off of each other, drop down in the comment section below and let me know. I'm super responsive, more than willing to get back to you and answer any questions you might have. But if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, share it with your social networks, and until I see you next time, take care. But the styling is really nice. Like I said, very similar styling to what we saw inside of some of the other... And then we've also got the door we've got the option of folding open and closed. It's got those just 5 on it. That's exactly what it looks like. So we just push that. Are you kidding me? Oh, of course it's got to be... Oh.